Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Namibia, Dr. Hage Geingob, Madam Monica Kenkos, the First Lady, Your Excellency, Ngolo Mbumba, Vice President, Right Honorable Prime Minister, allow me to observe the protocol that's been said. I think it was quite comprehensive and exhaustive. Fellow Namibians, first and foremost, I wish to thank you for this opportunity to say a few words on this historic day. That's a momentous occasion for us all. Today marks a historic milestone for the people of Namibia and its future generations as the country launches Africa's new sovereign wealth fund, and the Minister of Finance is telling us we are not going to announce the name. But it's a very interesting name that we'll hear from time to time. Some of you are probably seeing somewhere in the room. The creation of this fund will, without doubt, strengthen Namibia's fiscal stability and resilience to the external shocks that stem from Namibia's interconnectedness with the global economy. The fund will transfer wealth sourced from Namibia's abundant natural resources so that generations to come also benefit even longer after the current resource base is depleted. Inspired by Article 95 of the Constitution, the Bank of Namibia is entrusted to manage the newly founded fund. The assets of this fund belong to the people of Namibia, belong to the government of the Republic of Namibia, and will be independently managed by the Bank of Namibia in consultation with the Ministry of Finance, who will act as a representative to the government. Your Excellency, my task here is today to draw on the governance structure of the fund, how we plan to implement and manage it, investment activities, as well as its structure and strategic objectives. Before addressing these actual management of the fund, allow me to make a few remarks. In these uncertain times, when the waves of financial markets turmoil stimulate discussion on every tenet of the global economy, there is scope for innovation, there is scope for paradigm shifts. Indeed, the economic shocks of the past decade have certainly provided an opportunity to rethink, to redesign and reposition the role and management of sovereign wealth funds. In this light, sovereign wealth funds have been acting as an important new force in the global financial system in both developed and developing countries as dynamic institutional investors. According to the 2021 Sovereign Wealth Funds report, sovereign wealth funds which operated from the wings are now at an all-time high, managing more than $10 trillion in assets. To put this in context, and by way of comparison, this would make sovereign wealth funds, on aggregate, the third largest economy in the world after the US and China. It is clear from recent data that the size and rapid growth of sovereign wealth funds is placing them at front and center of public attention. Thus far, the role of sovereign wealth funds in the context of the recent turmoil in global financial markets has been notably positive. If anything, the actions of sovereign wealth funds have shown that they can play a shock-absorbing role in global financial markets by dampening short-term market volatility and financially aiding countries in times of crisis. Sovereign wealth funds stabilize both fiscal outcomes. It stabilizes the balance of payments. In the same way, sovereign fund managers are influential lenders and investors in the global financial arena. Their stature stems from the important public policy responsibility, being custodians and managers of state-owned financial assets and liabilities. The 2008 financial crisis is devoted to best practice guidelines for institutional structures, governance, investment management strategies, and transparency, as well as accountability in the management and reporting of the activities of that fund. Several assessment tools have thus been developed for this purpose. In particular, the International Forum from Sovereign Wealth Funds has gained prominence as a voluntary grouping of sovereign wealth funds that in 2008 agreed to develop and adhere to sovereign wealth fund governance principles. They're also known as the Santiago Principles. These guiding principles have enabled Namibian authorities to benchmark and draft the investment policy of our fund, and these were signed off by the Minister of Finance early this year. The matter of public trust is important. Hence, the aspect of reporting and transparency is amplified in the policy document of this fund. To re-emphasize this point, the ultimate objective of the sovereign investors can thus only be achieved if sovereign wealth funds are managed within a sound governance structure and with appropriate investment strategies. With good governance follows sustainability. Close coordination with macroeconomic policies and the management of other assets and liabilities in the public sector is essential. The sovereign wealth fund objectives and consequent investment policy should be considered within macroeconomic policy statings and objectives, and the design of the sovereign wealth fund mandates should consider the implications for the broader economy. In addition, the governance structure must ensure a clear division of roles and responsibilities between the various governing bodies. In this regard, the Bank of Namibia and the Ministry of Finance are assigned with the statutory and fiduciary duty to manage the affairs of this fund. These key stakeholders will play an active role in the oversight and management of the fund in both the policy document and the memorandum of understanding that we have signed to do that. Like past performances, the Bank of Namibia undertakes to execute its statutory mandate and is strongly committed to managing this fund. This is in line with the Bank of Namibia Act 1 of 2020, Section 4, which expands on the holding and managing of the foreign exchange reserves of Namibia. We have an excellent governance structure already in place, and the management of the fund will therefore be complementary to the work we do already as a designated manager of the country's foreign exchange reserves. Worthy of note, our governance structure is aligned to international best practice, which has paved the way for a robust new strategic plan over the next 3 years. Due to the rapidly changing environment we are operating in, the Bank of Namibia will focus on its strategic plan while continuing to execute on its mandate with aspirations to be a leading, future-fit central bank committed to a prosperous Namibia. This strategic plan ensures that our new fund that we are launching today, that the President will be launching today, is prioritized in both our current and future organizational structure. The Minister basically gave us the two key components of this fund that we are managing. They are usually distinguished based on the stated policy objectives and consequent asset allocation. Based on Namibia's country-specific circumstances, there are two objectives that would be targeted by this fund, as explained by the Minister of Finance. The first component, just to reconfirm, is aimed at achieving short-term objectives relating to balance of payments and fiscal stability. The second will be geared towards the attainment of long-term intergenerational wealth transfer, and mainly from Namibia's natural resources. Accordingly, these two funds will have two independent investment accounts or portfolios, a stabilization account and an intergenerational savings account. Each of these portfolios will have different risk and return characteristics commensurate with the investment objectives and constraints. Your Excellency, our economic future depends above all on our capacity to produce goods and services that we and others value. The Minister was referring to potential to find that the relationship between economic development and natural resources is more complex. Many countries become poorer after discovering abundant natural resources, others become wealthier. They conclude that the quality of the institutional framework is decisive. A good case study to escape the resource curse is the Norwegian Government Pension Fund Global, a wealth fund which is often used as a benchmark in sovereign wealth funds globally. Philosopher Hendrik Sayes offers the following compelling perspective. He asks whether we have the right, in the course of a single generation, to expend resources that have taken nature millions of years to produce. Thus, spending and saving are mutually exclusive actions. The definition of saving is quite simply to abstain from spending. When a country comes to a windfall with the revenues and the retained on the portion saved, they are in a better position to increase spending while accumulating considerable savings. But spending must be adapted to the return on the portion saved. Sound and long-term management of oil wealth, for instance, also requires separating savings decisions from spending decisions. The fiscal rule sets an important cap. The rule states that oil revenues are to be saved, while the government may spend the return on the oil fund. Once the cap has been set, expenditures across worthy public programs must be made according to priorities, not by lifting the cap. If the ability to prioritize fails and the cap is lifted, the long-term margin will be reduced quickly. Less will be left for the future generations. In conclusion, making wise trade-offs is probably one of the most important and difficult challenges in public policy. Many of you may ask if it is feasible to set up a sovereign wealth fund during a time when the country is still reeling from the effects of COVID-19, while we are facing challenges of inequality, poverty, and unemployment, and our fiscal space is limited. Does it really make sense to set up a fund like this? I think these are relevant and valid concerns. Yes, but we must remind ourselves why this is necessary, what the overall benefits will be to our country, both in the short and long run. We must look beyond these valid concerns and do what we believe is the right thing for the present and future generations. There is a popular proverb which says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is now. Basically, in the context of the conversation here today, this means that if we want to collectively achieve these objectives, we believe our country needs the best time to act is now. The benefits of the fund far outweigh any short-term concerns, short-term considerations. The fund will have undeniable impact on our economic development and demonstrate our resolve to set up a pool of assets for future generations. Excuse me. This is indeed a further in the cap of the vision of Joseph, of the vision of our president, and our collective ambition. And today we are implementing our long-term thinking to ensure that the management of our wealth will be a success story. As leaders, despite all the challenges we are facing, we are dealers in hope. But today is all about demonstrating and celebrating actions. Today's actions will stand the test of time. I'm proud that the government of the Republic of Namibia has bestowed the responsibility to the central bank to play a leading role in the success of the fund and therefore contributing towards a vibrant, dynamic, and prosperous Namibia, in full acknowledgement that we are beholding a resurgent and resilient Namibia, a nation on the move. Let no man underrate the aspiration and abiding power of the Namibian people in setting up a sovereign wealth fund, underpinned by a strong institutional framework. The high roads of the future offered by this fund will be clear, not only for our times, but for a century to come. I thank you.